போகிறது என்னன்னா கல்வி உலகம். அந்த கல்வி உலகத்தை பற்றி நம்மளுக்கு சொல்ல போகிறது யாருன்னா அழகப்பா கலை கல்லூரி பேராசிரியர் ராஜன் கணபதி அவர்கள். உலக புகழ்பெற்ற கவிஞர் போஸ்ட் அவர்கள் அவர் எழுதிய கவிதையை பற்றி தான் நம்மளுக்கு அந்த சார் சொல்லியிருக்காரு. அந்த கவிதையோட பேர் என்ன? ஸ்டாப்பிங் பை உட்ஸ் ஆன் a snowy evening. இதை பற்றி அந்த சார் அழகாகவும் தெளிவாகவும் புரிஞ்சுக்கிற மாதிரியும் சொல்லி கொடுத்துருக்காரு. மாணவர்களுக்கு இந்த கவிதை யூஸ்ஃபுல்லாகவும் இருக்குன்னு சொல்லியிருக்காரு. இந்த வீடியோவை நான் பார்க்க ரெடி ஆகிட்டேன். நீங்கள் ரெடியா? வாங்க எல்லாரும் சேர்ந்து பார்ப்போம். நம்ம ஜீவனத்துக்கா ஏஞ்சல். பாய்.
Dear students, research scholars, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. I am Rajan Ganapathy, Assistant Professor of English, Alagappa Government Arts College, Karaikudi, and I am pleased and happy to meet you all through YouTube and to share with you my views on poetry in general with regards to the poem Stopping by Woods on His Evening, written by Robert Frost, a very famous American poet. Before I go deep into the poem and explore the hidden themes in the poem, I think it's my bounden duty to say a few words about myself. I have been serving in the Department of English of Alagappa Government Arts College, Karaikudi, for the past 8 years, and I have put in more than 20 years of teaching experience at college level. I have presented many papers in various state level and national level seminars and conferences held throughout Tamil Nadu, and I have also published some papers of repute in reputed journals also. My areas of interest include literature, American literature, and literary criticism. I am deeply interested in drama as such because I have been an actor of dramas when I was a student in Tyagaraja College, Madurai. With this introduction, let me go into the poem now. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is one of the most famous poems in American literature. The poet is Robert Frost, who also hails from a farming background, and Frost is a nature poet like Wordsworth and his poets are. In British literature, we have Wordsworth, Shelley, Coleridge, and others who belong to Romantic age and who are famous for their nature poems. Similarly, in American literature too, we have Robert Frost, an eminent poet of nature, who exemplifies the themes of nature in his famous poems. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is one of his classical poems, which elaborates on the themes of nature and duty. The poem is of 4 stanzas. Each stanza consists of 4 lines. Let me recite the whole poem to you, and then I will explain to you the hidden meanings in the poem. Whose woods these are? I think I know. His house is in village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse may think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness belt a shake to off if there is some mistake. There is no other except the downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. The poet expresses his wonder that he is standing alone amidst the beauty of woods during a winter night while he was traveling on his horse. He is attracted towards the beauty of the woods, that he wonders at its beauty, and he also feels that the owner of the woods would rather envy him for standing there and admiring the beauty of nature. The second stanza, the poet introduces a figure of speech called personification. Personification is a figure of speech in English in which animals are given the state of a human being. They are elevated to that of human being, endowed with feelings and emotions. The horse in the poem feels that his master is standing there, and it also wonders why his master is standing there, because that is not a farmhouse. Farmhouses are places where the travelers would exchange their horses while they go on a long travels. So the horse is wondering why his master is standing there, because it is not a farmhouse, and the horse comes to know that the master is lost over something. And while the poet is admiring the beauty of the woods, while he is lost in the beauty of the woods, while he lost himself, while he is taken to an utopian world, the world of nature, which is filled with so much of joy and ecstasy, the horse simply shakes its head to remind the poet that they are standing amidst the woods, which is not their place of destination. So once the poet comes to know that he is standing there, forgetting to go ahead of his journey to reach his destination, he makes a contrast between reality and imagination. Reality is something which is real, and imagination is full of things which are beyond our own world. The world of imagination, we call it in English. And especially Keats is known for depicting the world of imagination in his wonderful poem Ode to Nightingale, when he talks about the world of Nightingale, which is filled with beautiful music and which makes him forget his own self and gets transformed into the world of Nightingale. Similarly, Robert Frost too feels that the beauty of nature makes him transform to the world of nature, which is far away from the world of reality, because the world of reality is filled with sorrows and sufferings, whereas the world of imagination is full of happiness, like the world of Nightingale. So Robert Frost feels, and he really wants to stay there for time, admiring the beauty of the woods. But alas, he cannot stay there for a long time, because he has to go ahead with his journey to reach his final destination. The last 4 lines of the poem are charming and magical in tones. The woods are long, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. The poet here expresses his concept of beauty and duty here. Robert Frost's last stanza of the poem makes us understand the distinction between beauty and duty. What is beauty and what is duty? Is admiring nature is beauty or duty? It is one's wish and desire to admire nature. At the same time, desires are to be controlled. We cannot let off desires to handle ourselves. Desires should not be our masters. Once we let desires to be our masters, we will be in great trouble. So it is our duty to make sure that these desires are self-controlled, that we are able to control them using our own senses. The poet expresses his desire, his deep desire, his burning desire to stay there and to admire the mesmerizing beauty of the woods. No doubt, as a human being, anyone would do so. But how long is the question? A million dollar question for which we have no answer. How long one can stay in the beauty of the woods? For this question again, the poet himself comes out with the answer. The answer lies in the second line of the last stanza. But I have promises to keep. How long I can stay there, and I can stay there or I cannot stay there in amidst admiring the beauty of the woods, because I have promises to fulfill. But the use of conjunction makes us understand the significance of the poet's burning desire. The poet's burning desire is to stay and admire the beauty of the woods, no doubt about it. It's wonderful. But how long he could do it? Because he had a long way to go. He had to go a long way to fulfill his destination. But I have promises to keep. And the last two lines are charming and magical in tones. Again, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. And again, Robert Frost has introduced a refrain. Refrain is yet another figures of speech in which a line will be repeated, a line or a word would be repeated more than once to reiterate or to emphasize the significance of some idea which is hidden in it. In this poem, the last two lines reinforce the idea that one has a lot of things to do. One has to fulfill a lot of things before he goes to sleep. The word sleep again has a lot of meanings in the poem. That's why the poem is often said to be allegorical in tones, because sleep here doesn't mean an ordinary sleep. Sleep is not which comes to us in ordinary, which comes to us ordinarily. Sleep here, the poet refers to sleep as death. Sleep is something which is haunting in tones, according to the poet. It is not the ordinary sleep which he refers to, but the haunting death, the nightmarish death, which often troubles any poet as well. Many poets there are many poets in general often dwell in deep at the concept of death in their. Take for instance the poet Emily Dickinson, whose poems are often designed on the theme of death. It becomes the theme of her major poems. Poems like Because I Could Not Stop for Death, where she talks more about the theme of death and how death comes to her as a visitor and how death carries her till the tomb. So the readers are given a nightmarish experience when we read that poem in particular. Reading that poem again and again makes us understand that death is not something a nightmarish experience for anybody, but it is something more than a visitor. So we come to understand that we need not be afraid of death, as we can even be prepared and to invite death. So it is our duty to get prepared for death. This is what Emily Dickinson means to say in her poem in her poem Because I Could Not Stop for Death. But here in Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, the poet Robert Frost gives a beautiful picture of nature and the beautiful objects of nature. How nature is enthralling, how nature is magnificent, how nature is something which is so close to our heart and soul. So Robert Frost himself had talked about the function of poetry. What is the function of poetry? Many poets have given definition about poetry and a poet. Even now we consider Wordsworth's definition as the hallmark of definition of poetry, because Wordsworth defines poetry as a spontaneous overflowing of feelings recollected in tranquility. But to Robert Frost, a poem begins in delight and ends in wisdom. Any poem for Frost is a matter of in the beginning, but as the poem grows, when the poem grows and finally when it comes to the end point, There you find wisdom of the reader emerges. Almost or indirectly, Robert Frost seems to talk about the reader's role in reading poetry. What is the role of a reader in reading a poem? Or how should one read a poem? Poems should be read, of course, aloud. At the same time, reading poetry is a rewarding experience because it allows the reader to explore many hidden ideas in the poem. So, any classical poem like The Stopping by Woods may have different layers of meaning. The reader has to explore these hidden meanings by rereading the poem again and again, sometimes even more than 10 or 15 times, in order to understand the significance of the poem. Only then the poem will grow in tones. If you say that Stopping by Woods is a great classical poem, the credit, of course, goes to the author, the creator of the poem. At the same time, the credit also goes to its readers for having elevated the status of the poem to that of a great level. So the real credit only goes to the readers for having embellished the poem with many layers of meaning. By reading the poem many times, we are able to understand the significance of reality, the significance of life as such. And that way the poem becomes a beacon of light. The poem is still one of the most celebrated poems in English literature. So the poet Frost makes a wonderful idea regarding the concept of beauty and duty in the poem. Beauty is something which is related to aesthetical values. Beauty often gives us joy and happiness. That's why Keats says, a thing of beauty is forever. Beauty is something really which is magnificent. But at the same time, duty is equally important. So duty too elevates our personality. So it is our duty to elevate our own personality. How to elevate our personality? One's personality could be elevated only by fulfilling his need. So fulfilling our wishes at the right time is also one of the hallmarks of any personality. If we do so, naturally we remain as unique and noble men of nature. So Robert Frost means to say that admiring beauty is okay, admiring beauty is good. At the same time, fulfilling one's desire before death is equally important. That means you have to keep your promise which you have made in your life. Promises are to be kept, they should not be ignored. So think often of your promise which you have made to yourself and to others, and try to fulfill those promises without delay, because only what you have said will stand forever, and only the promises you have made to others will be considered as the testimony of your character and trait. So keep up your promise all the time and don't try to ignore your promises. This is what Robert Frost seems to say in the entire poem. Moreover, the poem is often considered as a poem of repute because this poem is often considered to be a favorite poem of Jawaharlal Nehru, our first Prime Minister. It is even said that Jawaharlal Nehru often keeps this poem in his pocket, and even after his death, a copy of the poem is found written in his library, in his diary. So this shows how much Nehru loved this poem all the time. And no doubt the poem is not only so dear to Jawaharlal Nehru, but also to all the readers who wish to derive happiness out of reading it. That's why I told you that reading a poem gives immense joy and happiness, and reading a great poem like Robert Frost stopping by wood on a snowy evening is a rewarding experience because it not only gives happiness, it also elevates our personality. It also makes us understand the significance of life, and as I told you earlier, it also signals that the setting wisdom in our mind. So wisdom dawns late, people say. So by reading a great poem, wisdom also comes to us. So this onset of wisdom or intellect is one of the hallmarks of any personality, and in this manner Robert Frost's poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is one of the most beautiful poems ever written in English. So let us read more poems, let us read poetry, novels and short stories all the time, and let us be good readers of literature. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe it, and don't forget to share it with others, because sharing is sharing joy also. So with these few words, I take this opportunity to thank my good friend and brother, Father George Fernandez, who gave me a golden opportunity to meet you all through this YouTube and to share my views on poetry as such. Thank you all. Have a nice day. See you. Bye.
இந்த வீடியோ உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்சிருந்துச்சுன்னா லைக் பண்ணுங்க,